You know, there are days that I'm happy to get a screener of a movie that hasn't come out yet. It's rare you get a screener. They will usually want you to travel to go see a movie, but of course, with the way the world is right now, it's hard to do. So yeah, there are days I'm glad to get screeners, and then there are days like this. Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all new Talkin Movies. As always, I am your host, the real Gino Reynolds, and today I'm going to be talking about The War with Grandpa, starring Robert De Niro and Oaks Fagley. I will warn you, there's going to be spoilers in this review. There are some things that I just have to talk about, especially the ending. But I will say this, and I've thought about starting a risk going to the theater risk meter or something. Um, Hollywood has actually graced us with this movie going to theaters, mainly because they know it's not going to be a blockbuster and make millions of dollars. So they're just like, well, we can put it out there. That's how much right now you can tell how much faith they have in a movie, but if they release it in theaters, they have no faith, or if they send it straight to a streaming service, they have no faith, or if they think they can make some money sending it to a streaming service, Disney Plus, they'll send it there. But this movie, they're putting it out in theaters, which tells me they didn't have a lot of faith in it. Well, I joked at first where I'm like I don't, there's days I like getting screeners and some days I don't. I'm kind of glad I got a screener for this because it saves me from having to go to the theater to see it. Now, I'm not going to say it's this horrible movie. I've seen way worse, but I'm also not going to say it's a good movie either. It has its moments, and while I thought it was fine, I wouldn't recommend going to the theater to see it unless you really want to go to the theater and it's really cheap. I would say wait for a rental, or even better yet, if it ends up on a streaming service somewhere like Netflix or Amazon Prime or something. I wouldn't risk going to the theater to see it. Yeah, I've seen better family films. I've seen worse, but I've seen better family films. So, what this movie is about is Robert De Niro is old, and that is a theme throughout the entire movie. He's old, and he gets in trouble at a grocery store for stealing groceries. Now, he just doesn't mean to steal them, but he's old. So, technology. He doesn't want to learn technology. He wonders where his favorite cashier is. Of course, the manager says she's gone. We're all automated now. And of course, a joke I've made personally is, oh, do I get paid for doing your job? Or do I save money for doing your job? Of course, and of course that makes me old, I guess, or getting older. Um, but he doesn't want to do it, but he tries the U scan, and I swear this looks like a Kroger. I worked at a Kroger for about 3 years years ago. I swore this was a Kroger. Um, and it doesn't say though, but I swore it was. He tries a U-scan, but it doesn't work, so he just says screw it and throws his food in his basket and walks out the door. Well, of course, he sets off an alarm, and the manager chases after him, and the manager ends up getting pelted by tons of food by all sorts of old people that are mad at the store manager, I guess, for going fully automated. And how dare you change things? How dare you? Anyway, he gets in trouble. Also, he has to get his license renewed because, well, though he says somebody hit his mailbox, it was really him because he's old and he can't drive. You get it? Again, him being old is like a theme in this entire movie. Um, he's retired from building houses. That was like his big thing, is like he built a ton of houses in this area, even his own. And I can't remember how long ago it said he lost his wife, but he doesn't want to leave this house because he built the house and there's memories there and everything. But his daughter, played by Uma Thurman, uh, he says he doesn't want to go to a home, and she goes, what if it's our home? So he reluctantly agrees to move in with his daughter. Enter the grandson, Peter, played by Oaks Fagley, who is probably most well known for playing Pete in the latest Pete's Dragon some years ago. he has to give up his room that he loves to his grandpa and move up to the attic where there's rats that like to chew on wires. That's a plot point later. And he is not happy about it. His friends convince him to, quote unquote, go to war with his grandpa, saying, look, I want my room back. And him and Robert De Niro get into tons of antics after that. They even sign a declaration of war, saying, okay, here are the rules of engagement and everything else. And one of the rules is no collateral damage. Well, Uma Thurman gets gets to be a part of a lot of collateral damage in this. We'll just put it that way. Okay. So that's the basic setup for the movie. And again, I'm going to be talking some spoilers here. But here's the thing about this movie. This movie is an hour and a half long. And I think my biggest complaint about this one, while the main story is pretty cohesive, it's silly, but it's cohesive. Boy, do they have to pad this movie with pointless side stories that lead to nothing. I'll try to remember a few of them. I can't remember all of them. The first one is the older daughter, who shares a room with her younger sister, by the way, and that's why you would think the main kid, yeah, he's moving up to the attic, but at least he doesn't have to share a room with his grandpa or a brother, right? That's kind of the point. The two daughters have to share a room. One of them's like really, really little, and one of them's, well, I think the actress is in her 20s, but she's a teenager in this, because her whole story is she's got a boyfriend that she's trying to convince her mom she doesn't have, even though it's pretty obvious that he's the boyfriend. And Uma Thurman is always after this kid, and there's a running joke where she always yells his name, Russell, you know. But anyway, the older daughter has a boyfriend, so that's a side story. It actually plays a little into the plot, so it's not as really unnecessary. The youngest daughter loves Christmas. This leads to advancing the plot because they need to have a party of some sort, and so her birthday party is a Christmas party. You have the friends at the school. This is where the stories really start to get pointless. Now, while you have the main character as a bully, who's a couple years older than him, and that does lead into a plot, but they really, yeah, I guess they resolve it, but it leads to something where it's like, it's one of those things in a movie where an adult ends up assaulting a kid, but it's played for laughs. But because, again, De Niro and his friends are old, so this is allowed. I guess that evens it out. They're old, so they're allowed to beat the crap out of a high schooler, I guess. They don't, throw fists, but they do assault a kid. Anyway, he kind of deserves it anyway. But so the school bully's story does play into it. But then you get into the kid's friends. First of all, I know my son, I'll have the screener for a couple weeks, so I know my oldest son's probably going to want to see this because, Isaac Cragdon's in it, and he was in Odd Squad. And TJ McGibbon is in this. She was the voice of the math room in Odd Squad, and she was the voice of Little Red Riding Hood in Super Wise. So my son's probably going to want to see this, which is fine. Again, it's a safe enough family comedy that, it's PG, and there's a couple things I'm just like, I really don't want to explain that joke to kids, but anyway, Isaac Cragdon's character has a side story. First of all, his character, he's a moron, okay? And second of all, they have a story where his older sister keeps mocking him in public about something. She'll bring his retainer and say really loud, you left this somewhere, or just all these things. She brings in like a pair of his underwear saying you left this somewhere, and the story really leads to nowhere. So there's a lot of stuff like that. There's a running gag in this where Robert Riggle, who is the father in this. Um, he's also I guess he's an architect. He works in like a soul sucking job of designing like ready made stores like a Walmart or Kmart or something like that where it's pretty well already set up. Um, there's a couple of things with him. There's one where he's like designing the new town library or like an add-on to the library. And it is a way for his character to connect with De Niro's character because De Niro's character kind of treats him like crap at first, but uh, they have this thing where he's designing the library, but it doesn't lead anywhere. Honestly, I think they were saving it for a sequel, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But I'm sorry if I will be really surprised if this movie gets a sequel. Um, but there's also another story with Riggle's character and De Niro where I believe it was 2 times, it might have been 3 in this hour and a half stretched out runtime where Riggle gets to, and this is the joke I really don't want to explain to my kids, even though they'll get it. Even though they don't show anything, there's a couple, 2-3 times where Riggle's character ends up seeing Robert's little De Niro, and I mean, yeah, it's just supposed to be played for laughs, but it's just, why are we doing this? Why does he have to see that? And it, of course, leads to nowhere. There's also where, even though they don't really talk about it much, they do talk about De Niro's character missing his wife. But there is a love interest with Jane Seymour's character. And of course, you can see it coming a mile away. But what's funny, though, is when they're at this party near the end of the movie, Jane Seymour's character's kind of, I believe she was flirting with Cheech Marin's character, which is one of De Niro's character's friends. And I think it was him. And I thought, oh, are they going to do something with them? And then, of course, there's nothing. And then they kind of force the De Niro love interest story. And I'll talk about that in a bit. There's a whole thing with Uma Thurman, even though this one kind of does play into the main story because she's the collateral damage. Again, Uma Thurman gets caught in, she gets in trouble with the cops a couple times. She gets hit by flying objects. Uma Thurman kind of gets beat up in this movie a little bit. So there's that story. There's again the friends of the main character join him, and De Niro's friends join him, and they help with the war. Christopher Walken's character is kind of a, he acts way younger than his age. He has like an apartment that any man his age that dreamed of having an apartment like that when they were way younger. He has one of those apartments where he's got video games and pool tables, and he's like, this is a teenager's dream. And he's like, yeah, but no teenager could afford it. So it's like with, like I surround myself with some of that stuff, right? It's like, hey, I can afford it now. Even though I don't have the kind of money Walken's character has. He definitely has better toys than I could dream of. So yeah, there's just all these side stories going on, and they're definitely there to pad the runtime, because if they weren't there, this movie would probably be about an hour long. And again, a lot of these stories don't lead to anything. Some do, some don't. But the ones especially with the friends don't lead anywhere. When it comes to the war itself, this is where this movie kind of reminded me of like a Daddy's Home or something, because at times it gets a little bit ridiculous on the hits these guys take. I mean, yeah, there's some things where they're like taking apart tables and things like that, where it's just simple pranks that anyone could do. But then there's some falls and things like that. It's like, yeah, he wouldn't have survived that. He would be broken in half. And that stuff's fine. But, that's definitely not the best part of the movie. The best part of the movie for me was definitely the interactions of Robert De Niro, Cheech Marin, Christopher Walken. You can throw Jane Seymour in there too. When they're palling around, that's probably my favorite part. But then again, it's because I like all three of them, and I like Jane Seymour too. Again, but she wasn't in the movie as much as the other three. All in all, this one, as I said at the beginning, it's not worth going to the theaters to see unless you can find it for cheap and really want to risk it. If you're not wanting to go to theaters because of what's going on in the world, unless something comes out you just must see, for me, this one is not a must see. Again, I joked about it, but I'm glad I got a screener for it. I was not wanting to go to the theater on Friday to see this, but now I got to see it early, and I don't have to go, and that kind of makes me happy. It's not the worst thing I've seen, but again, it's not that good either. Again, save it for a rental, save it for streaming services, something like that. It's a fine family comedy, but there are way better out there. There's way worse too. I've seen way worse than this, but this one is fine. And now that I've said that, I'm going to talk about the ending. I want, for those of you that don't want the ending ruined, this is where you need to cut off now. The ending, while I mentioned the story about him, Rob Riggle's character, working on the library sketches or whatever, I think they may have been saving that for a sequel, but they don't really say, because they don't really conclude that. Did he get the job or whatever? But what they do tease at the end, and the end is really weird. I mean, though there are, there is stuff in the credits, like bloopers and things like that, there's really no story advancement. They end the movie really strange because it's something that you thought would have been a plot point in the movie, but are they teasing a sequel? That was what was weird for me. It's like, are you really teasing a sequel for this? I guess this is based on a book series, so there could be more books. I don't know. I was not familiar with these books. And De Niro's character is supposed to go fishing with his grandson, and it's like their thing. But he says, sorry, buddy. You know, they've said all our differences, of course, about the room and everything. He lives with them now, and they're all happy and everything. But he says to his grandson, I can't go today. I'll make it up to you. And as his grandson's looking out the window, he sees that Robert De Niro is going on a date with Jane Seymour's character. And the movie ends on like the kid just like staring at them. There's no gag, no nothing. It's like, are you really teasing a sequel? Is this really how you're going to end your movie? It would have felt kind of dark had they not had the bloopers at the end. So, yeah, this movie, especially the ending, was kind of weird. And yeah, as I said before, I don't really recommend it as a theater watch. It's definitely an at-home watch for as cheap, if not possible, free. As cheap as possible, or get it for free on like Netflix or something if it eventually comes to that. So anyway, that's going to be all for this edition of Talkin Movies. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the Real Gino YouTube channel. Like this video. You have anything to say about the war with Grandpa? If you've seen the books, I'd really be curious if you see the movie and you like the book. I'd like to hear the comparisons about that. But if you have anything to say about it, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Till next time, I am your host, the Real Gino, Gino Reynolds. See you later.